What's up, guys? Frank here with Guitar Master, inventor, fellow vegan, best looking man in the room, and founding member of Cynic and Aeon Spoke, Mr. Paul Masvidal. Paul, it's great to see you, man.
Good to see you, Frank.
I know you're currently gearing up right now for your shows on the East Coast, and I admittedly have not been fortunate enough to see your solo shows just yet. But for fans of your work, what could they expect from an intimate performance like that? Is it all solo stuff? Is it some Cynic? Is it just you?
Yeah, it's basically a combo platter of some Cynic stuff, really the Cynic stuff. Sometimes I'll bust out an unexpected acoustic version of a song that people wouldn't anticipate, but most of what of Cynic I've been doing is the retraced kind of which is more kind of electric, kind of hybrid electroacoustic vibes, and then I'm doing Eon Spoke material, which was a project we had post Cynic. Um, Basically that kind of put a record out through SPV. We had like two little releases, and it was a band that never really properly toured, and that material kind of I'm just like revisiting that stuff because I never got to like perform it, and it feels really close to me. So it's nice to kind of bust that stuff out. And then I'm doing all this mythical human vessel stuff, which I released kind of through 2020 window. All kind of, it was really 2018 to 2019, 2020. There was like three EPs, Mythical Human Vessel. And it all kind of, for the most part, is kind of a acoustic environment, but not like singer-songwriter, more
Right.
like almost like ambient acoustic. It's more spacious and ethereal and kind of immersive and trippy, kind of not like a coffee shop vibe at all. Yeah, not a shred thing at all. I mean, there's moments where I'll play, but it's driven in songs, it's kind of just like heart songs, so it's pretty bare bones in that sense.
You put your passion, your innards, out there and on what you do and your music and your craft. Do you ever feel like you kind of take a piece of yourself out of it, when you put it out to the world?
Yeah, I feel, I'm definitely more of an introvert than an extrovert. Like performing is something I've had to force myself to get used to in a sense, because I'd much rather just hide in a studio and play my guitar and write music and disappear. But I found that there's this kind of aspect with putting yourself out there that is very therapeutic and cathartic, and then it becomes reciprocal because you're doing this dance with an audience, and the music kind of reinvigorates and finds itself in a different, it like really comes to life in a way that you can't really do if you're just studio stuff. It's like, so it becomes this, it's more of a reflective thing. And I don't know who it was that said that songs aren't really finished until they're performed. And I get that. There's this thing about just feeling very seen, and also like it having nothing to do with you. You're just this vessel for transmuting information, to kind of share with people. And I find that, like, because it's hard to be objective with one's own work, that you start to really hear what it sounds like through the eyes of others. Like you get to bounce it off an audience. It's this like collective mirroring thing. And it's like, oh, okay, now I get what this is all about. It's like it feels more collective. It's not just you're in your own trippy headspace freaking out about details that no one will ever care about. You end up being more in this kind of live situation, which I like because live is also unpredictable and things happen. So it's less there's more things, more variables, which is kind of awesome in a sense, you have to just let go.
I love that. I mean, it sounds like, because you are mostly introverted, like every time you set foot on stage, it takes a little something to get there.
Yeah, it's like I'm comfortable, I don't ever feel like I feel comfortable kind of playing and sharing this any work really, but this work in particular. This work I think is different in the sense compared to like a Cynic concert with a band, is that it's easier to kind of hide with a band and with very complex, crazy music. It's like you can just be more hidden and obscured in lots of notes and music and stuff, as to where this is more just like naked, you know? So it's a bit it feels like you're putting more out there and you are kind of taking a bigger risk in a sense. But I think that to me feels like my duty to keep putting myself in uncomfortable situations and find my way through it, you know, to find ease in the discomfort, right? I mean, just to kind of relax and I generally, once I get into that place, I'm fine. I just gotta get settled and kind of find the space. But I also find that the audience in general, you know, your music and people's art attracts like vibes. So it's like everyone I meet, I'm like, oh yeah, we're all kind of in this together. You know, this isn't about me. This is like a collective thing. We're just all here participating in this sound, you know. It's that's how it ends up becoming. So there is a piece of you that's lost, but it's a like a good, healthy thing in the sense that there was no one ever there. You know, like it's almost like, you know what I mean? It's almost
Yeah.
just like, what am I holding? What is there to hold on to? It's just keep giving it away.
Right, right. No, that's a beautiful thing. And, I mean, the world does know you, predominantly through your work with Death and Cynic, but of course, as we're talking about your solo stuff, you've done so much in your career, whether it's the side projects, non-metal stuff, collabs. At the end of the day, is there any one project or passion that you put out there that like speaks to you on a different level than others?
Oh yeah, I mean they're all quite different. I think the thing for me with this stuff, it actually speaks to like childhood. It's like it's the kid hearing folk songs in my mom's house and singer-songwriter stuff, which was the initial spark to even become a musician. I was like enamored with songs and songwriting, and then I had an older brother who was into like classic rock. And of course, I just had to push the envelope and rebel more. So I went more into like metal. And so I went from, he was like, you know, Sabbath, Zeppelin, maybe dabbled in Sabbath, Zeppelin, Pink Floyd. And I went, you know, Maiden, Metallica, you know, Slayer. And then of course, guitar playing. So I kind of skipped over this like root thing of songwriting and I came back to it after Cynic, which was like almost bypassing a foundational element, which is like just writing a simple melody that's really effective. And so Cynic did that where it was kind of like we went to the nth with extremities being technical and proggy. And then it was like, oh, we just want to write good songs. So in our minds, by the time Focus came out, we were thinking we were writing really kind of simple, catchy hymns. But it wasn't to the public, to everyone else. It was like, this shit's crazy. But we heard it as these catchy songs that we had just familiar ourselves with. But this is the complete reduction of that, in a sense, more subtraction. It's more like stripping it way back to like foundational stuff, which really at the root of every Cynic song is this kind of stuff. Like they all start out with these kind of acoustic singer-songwriter environments, and then I kind of produce them in a way that sounds like a Cynic song. So it's all connected weirdly, you know, and but yeah, I feel it's really easy and nice to get up there and do something solo and just kind of relay sound in a really simple and beautiful way
Right.
rather than like a wall with layers and riffs and parts and vocoders. It's just like the opposite, you know, it's kind of like
It
completely the other
sounds
end.
it sounds so vulnerable, in a weird
Yeah, I
way.
mean that's the goal is right, just to be as real as possible and to take strip away anything that doesn't feel authentic. You know, I'm just like that's just trying to get to the root of it as clearly as possible, just to say the truth, you know, and not hide at all, like behind anything, just to be completely seen.
Right.
So that's yeah, it's good for my health.
It's amazing that you have that in your life, I mean, a lot of artists they kind of get pigeonholed or maybe just lose direction of doing more than one thing, but you were easily one of those people that straddles the world of metal and non-metal in the same breath. Do you consider yourself mostly a metalhead these days, or less and less so?
I mean, it's funny, like I always say this, like even when we were making Death's Human, we were listening to everything but metal. It was like we were, and part of what made that record interesting is that we were so into like jazz and fusion and psychedelic music. And so it was like it was all informing the metal. And I think having those eclectic kind of tastes and a very diverse palette as a musician has brings more freshness and originality as to where if I was just listening to all metal, I think I have a metal core in the sense that I will always identify and connect with extreme music. And it's one of those things where I'm always listening to everything. I mean, right now I'm actually just trying to listen to silence, and I've been in this space for a while. I like because I'm hearing a lot of new music in my head, and then that has to get kind of come out and through the instruments. So I try and create as much space as possible to just like let it come through, because otherwise it's if I listen to more stuff, I get sidetracked and I'm like, so I'm just trying to like open it up. So I like worship silence. I worship, I mean, even the sound of a city and stuff I'm down with, but um it's careful with more notes and more harmonies and more bands and more like I'd rather look at a painting or something, or just go to a museum. Like that's enough input for me when I'm in a active like writing creative process. But yeah, I mean, I'm one of those outsiders, like extreme metal, but also like, folk and kind of
Right.
all over the map. Like it's hard to put it into one. And that's Cynic was always that. That's the thing. We were like that as kids since our teens. We just had these moments of doing this extreme music, but our tastes were always super all over the place. And it was hard back then, especially because people thought you're supposed to do one thing and you can't be. Thankfully, it's not that way anymore.
I feel like it's those boundaries are being shifted and people are opening up
Yeah.
to that. And in part, I mean, a lot of that has to do with you and like you said, everything you've been doing since like the Death era in infusing that jazz and folk and different elements, you know.
Yeah. I mean, I sit there and I think even like what was the roots of the vocoder in Cynic? And a lot of it was my own insecurity because I wanted to sing, but I didn't feel like I could a singer. I was just like I always say I'm a guitar player that happens to sing,
Right.
but I also wasn't into like power metal, operatic vocal. I was like, that's not the right vibe for this music. And then I was really deep into shoegaze, like My Bloody Valentine during that whole Human era and I was like that was my way of entering it. It was like this vocoder ethereal alien voice that kind of was trippy but could work in the context of metal or you know what I mean. I was like trying to do my shoegaze.
Right.
It's like and it became the hybrid that was the Cynic sound. But it's interesting when I think about how that's all connected, because of different tastes in music.
And I'd love to dive into your background about practicing yoga and meditation because I feel like that's another element that you're really known for, you know, and something that also sets you apart from other metal musicians in the world. You know, when and how was your first experience with, say, Buddhism and how long before it became a big part of your life?
Well, I grew up with like a hippie mom, so I was exposed to this stuff throughout my life. Like my mom, rather than it being a religious household, she would take me to like a psychic, to have a reading. One of her best friends was an astrologer. So I was around these kind of that mindset since I was a kid. I have an older brother who's like a heavy lifer, yogi, teacher, and author as well. So we kind of both naturally gravitated towards that. But I also think I was a peculiar kid in that my mom was so cool and not trying to steer my thinking that I remember her taking me to an esoteric bookstore in Miami called Agartha and saying, buy whatever you want, like just, and of course I was trying to rebel because she was so cool. I couldn't rebel against anything, which you just let anything went. So I got the Satanic Bible, which had like, it was the Anton LaVey's thing. And then I got a book on magic, like black and white magic. I was trying to push the envelope in my own weird way as a kid, and but I ended up finding that what I got into the Hinduism stuff and was into Kriya Yoga really by high school. But I was into astral projection and dream work. So I was really obsessing over all these interior worlds. And I think that was in direct relation to being a musician because you spend so much time alone cultivating skill on an instrument. You have to like live in an inner world, almost like maybe a writer does to a degree. You're like most of your time is alone, essentially. So I connected with a lot of this inner work stuff, and then I got into practices in meditation and a lot of focus, for example, a lot of that was about like meditation experiences. I was just writing about like these journeys in inner worlds and reference points in Hinduism, which I was really studying mostly then, like those works. But then I think by my mid to late 20s, once we had broken up and I had entered this period of like deep suffering where I was just like nothing made sense. I was in this existential dread of like life feeling extremely meaningless and waves of depression and just very kind of down and out about how I could relate to the world. And that's when Buddhism kind of came in. I was at a bookstore actually in LA called the Bodhi Tree with one of my old yogi friends. And I remember he pulled down a book by a teacher named Chogyam Trungpa, who was like kind of brought Tibetan Buddhism to the West. And he was like, "This is the dude," and I was like, "Whoa." And I like opened it up and started to read, and I immediately connected because what I found with Buddhist teaching was that it was more about working with your mind. Like it was all like stabilizing your mind and like states of meditation practice, like learning how to be at ease with who you are at any given time throughout your entire life and to meet that with some grace, with some dignity, with some compassion. And as a result of being able to practice that, you extend it outwards. You have to learn how to do it with yourself first in order to do it with others, right? So all of that just spoke to me in a really profound way and helped ease. I had to become my own therapist essentially, and this was somebody, I was a kid who my mom put me in therapy at a very young age because I was so introverted and kind of weirdly kind of dark. I came from a lot of chaos, divorces. It was a very messy home, a lot of disruption, not a very stable household. And my tendency was to just go inward and shut down. And my mom was like, "Whoa, this kid's getting weird. We got to figure this out." Like she couldn't access me. And so I went into therapy and then I started to distrust therapists and felt like, are these people, do they have my back? And I was questioning what their motives were. And then this is where Buddhism spoke to me. It was like, oh, you're learning how to become your own therapist. You're learning how to develop a dialogue with your own mind and get to know it with some sense of curiosity and openness, and also and really kind of find your way into being in a human body and finding ease with that, because I felt very much like an alien from somewhere else that didn't connect with the world in this weird family. And my mom was cool, but she had her stuff, man. She was trying to survive too. And my father as well. They first, my parents divorced when I was 3 and both remarried, 3 times each by the time I was 10. So it
Wow.
was just like,
Yeah.
between both parents, it was just constant change. And so I never had that family of like, you're all sitting down at the dinner table. And not that I needed that. I think I'm actually grateful for all of this because I feel like it's been a great tool to kind of make art in a sense. Like, I've been able to kind of funnel all of this life stuff into a creative process, which has probably saved my life, essentially.
For
I
sure.
don't know, I don't know if I'd be in prison, but I'd probably be maybe dead. Who knows?
Right.
It's not like I wasn't like a looking for trouble, although I was a troublemaker too. I was extremely rebellious. I got kicked out of schools and camps, and didn't like authority. I was a punk. I was a little fucking pissed off punk, just going, fuck you, man. Like, don't tell me, but then I found that was all my own self-hatred. I was just kind of at war with who I was, and part of it also coming into my terms with my sexuality and kind of being at ease with that. And so there was all these layers to it. And, my drummer and I really bonded, Sean Reinert, over this stuff. As kids, we kind of like really found this like brotherhood with all of these things. And then we had this musical bond. So we could really just like purge all of our angst into this creative process. So it was always therapeutic for us. But yeah, I just found this investigation, of a creative process became very helpful for the art. It's like the more digging I did, the more interesting the music became just as a result of that. It was without even effort. It's just like, you do more work inside and the music gets more interesting, and it just kind of expands because your consciousness is expanding.
Yeah, I'm sure it has an impact because the way you look at life, it deters, like it basically informs your decisions on how to look at music and really everything in it. And
Yeah, it's
not only
all
that, but
connected.
even from like a band leader perspective, like you running Cynic as a business, as a band leader, like even that probably has ripples based on what you believe and what you do and how you act.
Yeah, yeah, for better or worse. I feel like I'm a late bloomer with the business side because I was so punk about the business for so long that I felt like, you have to straddle this line where you start to see it as, you know, because you're learning how to monetize something that you had nothing to ever to do with money, right? This art form is like completely driven by a creative process, passion, genuine, like working through things. It's so pure. And then suddenly it has to become this like gig where you're like making businesses. And it's like, and sometimes artists get transitioned through that with an incredible manager that helps kind of protect them from all of that, or at least guide them through it. But we were kind of on our own in a sense and dealing with a lot of sharks, especially early on. And I think it was overwhelming for us as empathetic younger people that signed a record deal at a super young age. And we were just like, fuck this business, fuck these people. Like I'll just be a session musician and do this as a hobby, a labor of love. But then I was like, there's a way to do it all. There's a way you can do this all and do it with integrity and surround yourself with really cool people. And there's a way to do this. And it's like I've finally gotten around to understanding that, but it's taken a lot of dismantling ideas in my mind about how I thought things should be or what I imagined how they would work. It's like you have to just let all of that go and just kind of let it show you the way, and also trust in your own intuition and be really yeah, I mean, you attract where you're at. This is
Yeah.
part of it too. You're bringing in whatever you're thinking. So it's always, co-creating this whole thing, right? It's an interactive play. Yeah,
I have a love-hate relationship with this industry and often will get down sometimes, just be like, everything is greed and money and like you I could not have said it better. We're taking a very pure and amazing art form and monetizing on it, and then the second that happens, like it alters what it became, what it is. So,
totally.
yeah.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance to kind of turn that and still maintain the purity, and I mean, I've noticed a lot of the people that have navigated this business well, they have a very thick skin, and they had to develop that to work with this business because it's impossible otherwise, because it's pretty gnarly. I mean, I'll just say that. It's like all entertainment industry. It's generally there's a lot of shadows, a lot of unhealed stuff, and but that's the nature of business in general. And I do think I don't try and view it as a bad thing. I view it as just part of a process. And ultimately, the goal here is to reach as many people as you can with your art to kind of to just it always boils down to the art, to the work. And like you have to kind of put, at least for me, I have to constantly reprioritize what I'm doing, which is at the end of the day, all I really want to do is just make art. I want to make music. I want to write fucking cool songs. I want to make things with my hands. I just want to like create. And if I can find a way to kind of have that be a participatory process with others and it gets shared, then it's like everybody wins, right? It's like now you're all, but yeah, the business, I get it. I get why a lot of people bail, why very few make it through. It's like it's a real art form. You have to dance around, and you have got to put people around you that you can trust. And yeah, I mean, I really believe I'm a late bloomer with this. I'm just starting to kind of get comfortable with it. Even the idea of like selling it, like you have to even approach that, find an authentic place with that rather
Hmm.
than thinking, you know what I mean? I had this
Yeah.
old punk in me who was like, you can't sell this shit. You
Right.
got to just,
You'd
it's
be
like,
it.
it's not, yeah, it's not about, but there's again, these like, this all these in betweens that are this way of navigating and finding it. I think there's a whole generation, maybe yours even, that had to find their identity through the online platforms, and like who am I in these spaces now with video and a podcast, and it's like some people just rolled with it and naturally blossomed, and others are just like barely, you know what I mean, and some people are naturally not inclined towards it, but it's like learning how to kind of find your way in this world, and especially a world now that's so driven by technology, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm so stoked on AI in a sense, 'cause I'm like, man, finally I can have like a proper AI like cynic like alien band that's not even like it's completely creative, but like this weird hybrid kind of holographic entity or something like it. The possibilities are so exciting to me because then it's even more about the art and less about a person. It's like it just becomes this whole thing. It's like a feeling space.
I love that you're vegan as well. I'm always happy to see you are on a happy cow as most, as much as I am actually.
Yeah.
And I wondered like when did veganism enter your life? Is it part of the Buddhist teachings or did you find it a different
Um,
way?
well, I went vegetarian in '89, and I was in high school, and then like vegan, it's been over a decade now. I mean, I was never a big dairy guy, anyways, in terms of that stuff because it didn't agree with my stomach. But then I really turned this corner over the years with even veganism and following a lot of great voices in the scene, just about doing what I can to not cause harm. Basically, it's like I don't even use the diet argument. Like I am incredibly healthy as a result of a vegan diet, and I think it's a huge bonus. But really, at the end of the day, it's like if I don't have to eat this animal, like why should I? It doesn't want to die, right? And of course, there's the whole plant argument now, like plants are, feeling things and all this, but we're mitigating this with this logic of a sentient creature, something with the central nervous system that's actually avoiding death, that's avoiding being killed, where there's a whole industry built around it that's really gnarly. And it's like, man, it's so easy to just make that decision. It's so logical to me. It's like I don't even have to, you know what I mean? It's like I
Mhm.
don't but I realize we're so far along and so programmed now as a society. It's been so integrated, this world of meat and disconnect, so desensitized. It makes me think, I really believe like I want to believe that there'll come a time where we'll look back at this period of our, this species and think, holy shit, what were we doing?
Mhm.
We, what were we doing to these animals? Wow.
I mean, there's no wrong reason to go vegan, I think, in the end. Um,
Yeah.
but I just appreciate that you're one of the, early adopters of the vegetarian vegan diet. And,
Yeah.
it was, like for instance, Napalm Death and Carcass were some of the earliest
Yeah.
lyrics that I wound up reading back in the early 90s. And that's what turned me vegetarian and, so
Yeah.
forth. Um,
Yeah.
So I think it matters to kind of put yourself in your art and put it out there, and I really applaud you on that, you know.
Yeah, oh, I appreciate it. It's always when I meet a fellow vegan, it's like instant kinship. It's like, oh man, that's a huge thing out of the way right there. We're just like we're eating the same things. This is great. Like
Right.
we've seen each other eye to eye on that issue. Like that's helpful. There's such a long way to go. You know, it's incredible how much work is still needed to
It's
be done.
It's true. It's like everybody's talking about how it's like the biggest craze. I'm like, sure, it gets a lot of attention these days, but if you look at the actual stats, we're still only 2.5% of the world. That's it, you
Is
know?
that what it is? I mean, again, it's this logic. I remember hearing someone say this about peace, like in the 60s and then 70s, 80s, people were like complaining, oh, the peace sign is meaningless now. It's become pop culture. And it's like, let it be cheapened. It's the world is upside down. We're still a warring species bombing each other and killing. Like let it enter whichever way it needs to enter, the idea of peace, even if it's watered down. And I say the same with the veganism, whatever it takes. Like I sit there and I think, I wonder with the vegan stuff, what will probably happen. I mean, I always theorize about these things is the lab meat. That's
Mm.
probably where it's going to turn the corner because they're going to get like, I've got this cow's cells. And it'll become like real foodie, you know what I mean? Like a foodie culture around the cells of certain cows that are, they're producing this meat, but they don't have to have the farm anymore. So the industry will see that it's actually saving them money and that
Right.
it tastes the same and it looks the same. So it just has to turn that corner. It's just a matter of like, it's like the industries, it's like, look at this, we're still digging in the ground for oil. We don't need to be doing that. I mean, we have
No.
this sun, we have like incredible sources of energy, but the infrastructure is so old and embedded with this oil bullshit that it's going to take a while to rewrite that. And I think the same with the veganism. It's like for the diet to shift, it has to be like it has to enter the whole economic space, which is where it gets complicated. It's
Yeah. I completely agree. I think once the greedy corporations have figured out a new way to sustain or make money with more sustainable products or means, then it'll happen, you know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, totally.
In a chaotic and infuriating world and time we live in, filled with existential dread, what would be your advice for those who are trying to live a more centered life?
I always try and come back to like root stuff of like I have a very I can very easily access the reality of impermanence. And I don't know if this is from hospice work or just feeling like how fragile it is to be alive. And when I can notice that in any uh, engagement with another person, I I have compassion opens up in me. I start to see, I'm like, whoa, okay, this has all these views, all these ideas of how we think the world should be and who we think we are. At the end of the day, it kind of gets reduced to this thing that we're all in the same boat, that we're all dealing with the same fears, the same troubles. These past days I've been in San Francisco and I've been walking a lot. I averaged 30,000 steps a day. And I was always spending time going through the TL, the Tenderloin, and walking around all of those areas with the unhoused. And I kept telling some of my friends that live in the city, I said, it's not really dangerous. Actually, most of the Tenderloin are people just living their lives, blue collar people that live in those neighborhoods, and then they're around the suffering of junkies and addicts. And the junkies and addicts aren't even coming at you, they're just in their own addictive process. But man, it's so grounding to see that in a city of so much abundance and so much wealth that you have this seemingly disparity, this brokenness. But I think it's actually really beautiful just this idea that that we're all in this together, and that the that it's easy to get caught up in our own ideas of how we think things are in a separate self. And it's I'm always trying to remember this, and it takes going through a bad neighborhood, which is often a metaphor for one's own mind, of just remembering that everyone's kind of wants the same thing at the end of the day, and they're just sometimes going about it in a way that might not seem as skillful. But I feel so connected to people going through hardship. I feel so it actually really grounds me, and it makes me want to. It feels like it brings a real kind of visceral aspect to the creative process. Like I, I don't. I love beauty, but I have found that sometimes if you put me in an environment that doesn't look beautiful, the music will be more beautiful as a result because I'm aspiring. I need the contrast to access. Do you know what I mean? Like rather than just hiding away from the world or going into my own bubble. It's like it's almost like putting yourself in the trenches of experience in order to activate a creative process that feels more genuine and grounded. And I think that's what I'm intentionally doing a lot of times is, and it's not like a self-harm thing. It's more about like, what can I do to make this work be as cool as possible without being destructive to oneself, Like what environment can I put myself in to make this art come alive? And it's again, there's this balance because so much of it is internal, but we forget that we do live in an external world to a degree. And it's the air we're breathing, the sounds we're seeing, the people we're meeting, it's all informing this process of whatever you're doing with your life. So I'm always trying to kind of get to the root of that. And I feel like that keeps me connected to what it is to be alive, which is quite humbling.
I think that is honestly one of the most beautiful answers to that question that I could have ever asked for, and you're absolutely right. It's those moments, the moments of losing somebody, the moments of putting yourself in peril or witnessing it or feeling it even, that'll remind you why we're here and really the nature of who we are, as humans.
Yeah, it kind of strips away all of the
Yeah, the fodder.
ways that we can't see things as they are. Yeah, and so it's a great way to kind of get into a very real place with what's happening. And as a result, the heart opens wider, and then you realize, wow, I have so much room in my heart to kind of hold all of this, to expand, to let it be broken and feel raw and tender, and all of that stuff is so like, to me that's like, I just want to hang out there all day, because then I feel connected to what it is to be alive. This is the whole point, is to feel that essence of being in a human body.
Thank you. I mean, it's been an honor and a pleasure to talk with you today, and
Thank you, Frank.
yeah,
Yeah,
I hope we get to chat more soon and hang
I
out in
hope
LA or
so.
go get some
Yeah,
Indian food.
let me know when you're in town.